we come to the portion of our show where we're doing our book club kickback, and we're going to bring the author on first, and then we're going to bring all the book club members that are in the waiting room, and some may come on later. And we're going to discuss Island Queen. Where's my book? Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. And it is a hefty book. So it is 500 and something pages.
Ooh, that's a journey.
Yeah, that's a lot of writing. So we're bringing on the book club representatives that have signed on. We're bringing them on, and we're going to do a roll call before we get started with our discussion. So we can recognize all of the book clubs that are joining us tonight on our first book club kickback for Black Authors Matter TV. So,
can you ladies hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Vanessa.
Perfect.
And are you going to be off camera?
Internet went out with the store, so I'm calling you from my phone. I will try and turn on the video, but if it gets unstable, I'll turn it back off.
Okay. All right, no problem. So we're gonna go. Let's see. Right, we have. Let me see. People who. Everybody, turn your unmute, so we can hear you.
Okay, you just talk about what you know.
So I'm going to start with what I see on my end, and we'll go. I'll just name what name is on the description. So Mama Tony, you're the first one. So what's your book club and where are you located?
Our book club is Prominent Women of Color, better known as PWOC. We in Southeast Georgia and Jacksonville, Florida. We have ladies on both sides of the line.
Okay, wonderful. Lolita Allen.
Hello, I'm Lolita Allen, president of Divas Read Book Club in Dallas, Texas.
Okay. Kay Larry.
Hi, I'm Kay Larry, and I'm with PWOC in Jacksonville in Georgia, and with Kush City in Houston.
Kay is one of our longtime book club members, but she moved away to Florida. But because we started meeting on Zoom, she could join us for our book clubs again. So she's back. Jackie Handy. Oh, I see you. Can you hear me?
I might not be able to hear you.
Okay, Jackie. She could join us. Somebody needs to unmute their or turn their.
Hi, I'm Jackie Handy. I'm here in Houston, Texas.
And what's the name
I
of your book
can hear
club?
you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now. So what's the name of your book club? Okay.
Yes.
It's some kind of delay with Jackie. And that happens. Okay, we see you, Vanessa. So we can see you. And Karen.
The name of our book club is the Mommy Network. We're a group of ladies who have known each other since our kids were in preschool, and we started reading books about 20 years ago. And so we're still together.
Wonderful.
Okay, Karen, can you say which book club you represent and where you're located?
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm in Dallas. I'm a member of Divas Read 2 book club.
Okay. And I'm not sure who this is. Char. It says Char.
It might be Shar.
Char.
That's me. I'm Charlotte, and I'm a member of Diva Reads 2 in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, you're also with Divas. And there's a Pamela's iPhone, but there's no camera. And it's okay, there we go.
Yes, I'm here. I am Pamela. I'm from Imani Literacy Group in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, all right. So we have different parts of the country represented. And we have the author, Vanessa Riley, on. And before we get started, each book club will get a chance to answer questions because we want to keep it interactive and a lively discussion. But I first want to ask Vanessa, one, with this being such a detailed book, how long did it take you to write it? One, and what was your impetus for writing it?
Yeah. Well, let me start with, it took 6 years to research. It took 6 months to write, because I'd done so much research. I knew Dorothy. I felt her. And so the words came very easily to be able to tell her story. Literally, I've been writing for a while, not as long as your guests prior to. I was listening to both Omar and Michelle. I've got about 22-ish, 25-ish titles to my name. But primarily I write stories between 1750 and 1830s. And I had been looking for Dorothy because the record's not complete. We weren't just enslaved people. The reason we are here is people who figured out how to survive. We stand here on the shoulders of so many individuals, and you can't have this period of time that the world is changing because, this particular time frame, everybody wants freedom. America is breaking away from the English colonies. You've got France wanting to get rid of their king. You've got Haiti that wants to overthrow the French and the Spanish and the British, and sometimes the Americans, who are all trying to mix and take over this island. And then every single colony, every island in the West Indies is wanting freedom, but no one wants to understand the other person's point of view. But for most of the records, you don't see us enabled, us making decisions, us impacting the world. You see what's happening to us. So you get the enslavement story, but you really typically hear the survival stories of those who figured out how to beat the system and win. So when I found a sketch of Dorothy, who I believe is Dorothy Corwin Thomas, being lovingly embraced by a prince of England who becomes a future king, I wanted to know who this woman was. I wanted to know her story. And when I found her, it was the gates opened up and I had to know everything about her life. So it took, once again, 6 years to put all the pieces together, but that's why your book is so thick. So I understand the person you didn't finish. Don't worry about it.
Yes. My question is, it's very interesting to me that you took so much time to do research. So I actually have a couple of questions. So my first question is, what did you feel was the most important thing that you needed to research to give your book the realism that it needed? And then the second question I have is, how did you exercise patience to where some people may do this much? They already know they want to write a book and they're doing research, but they're trying to write while they're doing the research. How did you exercise that patience to say, I'm not ready to start writing yet. I need to do research and to bring respect to my research so I can bring respect to the story?
There are times in a writer's life where they just run into a story that they know is bigger than them, that's bigger than anything you've written to date. So I knew I wanted to pay honor to Dorothy. I got very upset when I found out everything that she'd accomplished, and she was reduced to like a paragraph in one book and a chapter in another. At her time, Dorothy was world famous. Her will is archived in the UK. They don't just grab anybody, especially somebody who's been enslaved at one point of her life, and archive their wills in the UK. This is a very famous person. She breaks every stereotype that we have been fed. And so I knew I had to do her justice. And I had to be able to talk about this world that she lives in so that everybody could understand the decisions that she made. Because, in this book, I want everybody to understand Dorothy is not a perfect person. She makes some decisions that are like, what the heck were you thinking, Dorothy? She does some men where I'm like, what the heck were you thinking, Dorothy? She goes back and I'm like, what? But you get my point. But to do justice to her, I didn't want her to come off as a trope as she's some super Black girl who doesn't ever do anything wrong, who never has a moment of weakness. She's got this hard armor shield. I wanted you to be able to peel back the layers of Dorothy. And in order to do that, you got to know the research. You got to understand what shaped her. You got to know the histories of what's going on in Montserrat, what's going on in Dominica. Dominica. There we go. I'm going to get it right. Dominica. Now, I've been schooled by my Dominica friends. It's Dominica, not Dominica.
Okay.
Dominica.
Okay.
Dominica. Yeah, when you get people fussing at you from these different colonies, these different countries, Dominica. But, you know, as an American, we often think all the islands are exact same with some palm trees and some sand. And the problem is they are all different. And part of that difference is how they were colonized. So I had to know what happened in Dutch colonies because Guyana, Demerara, which is present-day Guyana, it was originally Dutch. So some of the laws, the way they look at enslavement, the way they treated women, etc., all based on that system. When you look at Grenada, had both French and English. Montserrat was Irish and English. Santo Domingo, which it's a little flavor in this book. You're going to get it in the next book. That's French and Spanish. And it's complete. Every one of these islands are different. How you became free as an enslaved person is different in every one of these islands based on who colonized it. So I had to bring that history in there and understand that system so that I can tell you why her movements. Because, you know, when I found her, I found bits and pieces. I find her birth records of her children in Montserrat, in Grenada, in Demerara. And it's like, there are thousands of miles, ocean, sea miles between these places. How did she get there? Why did she get there? But, you know, this back in the day, them boats ain't safe, right? And, you know, Black people, boats, you know, we got to think about that. So just in general, why all these pieces together? Can you hear me?
You're breaking up just a little bit, but I think we're okay. So I want to open it up for the first book club, just whoever wants to ask the first question among everyone. Don't be bashful. You don't have any questions?
They have questions. They being bashful.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can go down line. Whose team is everybody on? So there are 3 significant figures in her life, men. There's Sells, there's the Prince, and then there's Thomas. And they are different. They're different to her, and she's different when she's with each one of these particular gentlemen. Any comments?
No. I don't want to spoil it for anybody because I've read the book, both the art. As you can see, I'm wearing, this is a Dorothy hat. This is the fact on the front of the book. I was fortunate enough to do some readings and win this hat from Vanessa. I had an art. So I don't want to spoil it for anybody because believe me, I've read all 500 and however many pages, as my grandmother would say, from kiver to kiver.
I mean, the whole point of the discussion is to discuss the book. And if people don't want to know what it's about, they wouldn't be watching.
Right.
So ask away.
Okay, I don't necessarily have a question because I did not finish it. I'm still in the middle of reading them, about 75% through. And your question was, whose team am I on? And if I had to pick a person right now without knowing the ending, I would say I'm on Team Thomas. I think that, you know, from what I've read so far, he has been there for her. He has gone and come again. And, you know, he still feels, at least he's expressing himself as if he really truly loves her and he wants to be there and to support her. So right now, that's the person that I would root for if I had to.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I have a question about just the, is this your first hardcover book?
This is my first hardcover book.
Yeah, and that's that whole transition from paperback to hardcover had to be interesting, challenging, or different, or just what did you get a good reception when you first pitched the book, or did you have to pitch it to a lot of different people first?
Okay, so I went to Historical Novel Society. And Historical Novel Society it's like a group of authors. They write different versions of history, maybe historical mysteries, romance, but all about history, right? And they had these editor pitches, and you had to pay $20 to pitch your story. And this was the first conference where you had to pay, and I was fussing people. I don't want to pay those $20 because the conference fees was very expensive. It was like a $300 conference. I was like, it should be rolled in. Why do you want $20? I had to pay my $20, and I got an appointment with Rachel Kahn of Morrow, William Morrow, which is a HarperCollins imprint. And I start telling her the story, and she buys it at the table.
Wow.
She I literally, I had the cartoon that's in the back of the book that shows Prince William embracing Dorothy. And I just tell her the story about this woman who, rises from enslavement, buys the freedom of her family, goes on to have builds businesses across the West Indies, becomes one of the wealthiest women in the West Indies, and then goes on to a point where she literally saves generational wealth for women of color in the colony of Demerara. It was funny because I was couching it as telling Prince William's other mistress, right? So in my head, I was thinking, they're not going to want to focus on this Black woman. I want her story out here, but I'm going to have to couch it in somebody else's story. Or Prince William has two Dorothys that are significant women in his life. He's got Dorothy Kerwin Thomas, and then he's got Dorothea Bland in England. So I could do the two Dorothys, right? And Rachel, in her earnest, she was like, no, I want Dorothy's story. She saw what she was, I don't know if she was looking, but to me, it was like it was one of those moments. I was so shocked. I'm calling my agent as I'm walking out the thing. I was like, I don't know exactly what happened, but this is what she said. And I think you need to call her on Monday.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing. I mean, that shows you have to be ready. I mean, yes. You had attitude about paying that $20, but you went ahead and paid it, and then you brought it. You said, if I'm gonna pay this $20, I need to be ready for my pitch. And did you practice your pitch before you gave it?
No, because because I knew the story. Once again, remember, I'd done the six years of research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But in my head, I didn't know the world was ready for her story. So I was just telling the story about this woman I found and how I found this cartoon. And we were at a point where there are a lot of stories been told, but very few historicals have been told from a Black woman's point of view, centering a story around another Black woman, particularly in this time frame that's not set in America. It's set in the West Indies. It's got London, all these different aspects to it, but you hadn't seen that. Like, we have a lot that's been done here in the United States, and the time that it was bought. Now, this year's been a real, you see the fruit of all the books that were bought in that time frame, because we had Yellowknife came out, Wild Women in the Blues by Denise Bryce. We had Personal Librarian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There have been so many stories now, but during this time frame when it's being bought, nobody knows who's buying it, but everybody has this moment of, we want to hear Black women tell Black women stories. And so I was very fortunate. So sometimes it's about timing, because I don't think if I had pitched this before, it would have been bought a year or two, and literally a year or two before, it probably wouldn't have been bought. So you have to be ready. You have to be ready to tell your story. Just like Rhonda says, you got to be ready. But you have to be open, because I almost missed my blessing over $20. Think about that. Because in my head, I didn't think that was right, because I hadn't done that before. And I'm fussing over $20. And somebody's like, look, you already spent $300 on the conference. What's another $20?
So was it 2019 when you got signed, when they bought the book?
Yeah,
Was
2019 is when they bought the book.
Okay.
And so 2020 was I started writing. I wrote the book, turned it in April of in 2020, in the middle of darkness and pandemic. And we did 3 revisions, and by August the manuscript was completely finished, was ready to go into ARC stage. And at that point in time, when the announcement was made, there were about 8 film companies that started calling my agent, was like, hey, we want the manuscript, we want to take a look at this, et cetera, et cetera. There was no manuscript. Like I said, so back when I finished it in August, Sarah reached back out, Sarah Younger of the Nancy Yost agency reached back out to these various places. And one particular company, they were in love, and they're like, we want this book. We see this as a television series. So wow. Longboat Productions with Victoria Fee, who did, if you're into period pieces, she did Victoria. She works for ITV over in London. And then her partner in the company is Julie Ann Robinson. Some of you might know her from Bridgerton, Netflix.
Okay.
And Lady Dansbury, before she was a Lady Dansbury, had agreed to read the manuscript for the audiobook with Harper Audio. She too fell in love with it, because that's the beautiful thing now. Omar was talking about content. Well, content for Black women, meaty parts, consequential parts are very few, particularly when you're looking at historical pieces. Mm-hmm. And so she fell in love with it. And so she signed on board of those 3 women. And so we'll see, coming forward, what's going to be happening and whatnot. But the vision is something like The Crown, where you have 3 Dorothys. So you have young Dorothy, you got or Dolly, then you have Doll, the savvy girl, with love affairs, and then you have Dorothy, the businesswoman, handling her business and whatnot. So it's to get to the stage. So to come to start where I started, to be here at this position is very humbling, and I feel grateful, and I will never balk at that $20 ever again.
Well, you in the right place at the right time. And like I've said before, luck is a gift, but you have to be prepared and positioned to take advantage of the luck when it comes your way.
Absolutely.
So do any of the book club members have questions now? Everybody's so quiet. You all are so quiet. I thought you all would have a ton of different questions to ask Vanessa, because I have some more, but I don't want to hog the time.
Go ahead.
Now, I haven't finished the book yet. But I do plan to finish it, because I love historical fiction. And I went on a road trip, and it was a driving trip. I was driving. And so by the time, and we stopped in a different city every night. So by the time I was in, bed to read, I read about 15 pages and the book will fall on the floor. Because I tried every single night, but I was just, tired from, we had a wonderful time.
From the road trip, yeah.
But this is the exact kind of book. And I've been reading a lot of books like this of late, that I'm so excited about Black female characters being more than just slaves, or not being completely what's the word I want to use, overtaken by their circumstances. They still have a plan of action to change their circumstance and the circumstance of the people that they love. So that's what I really enjoyed about the book, is just, it really makes me excited and happy that there is content now that's representative. And it's one step at a time. There's
agree with you, Gwen. I feel like, I mean, what excites me is that Black women's stories are being told, and they're not just being told through the lens of being sexual or sexy or
Right,
having an attitude,
right.
all those stereotypes that are often associated with Black women. We're actually being able to tell a powerful story about a powerful Black woman. So we're able to see ourselves in a larger lens. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, the characters are multi-dimensional now.
Right.
They're
Mhm.
not one-dimensional.
And
And that's just really good. I don't know. I hope it lasts. I hope. I know there's tons of people with stories. It's just a matter of getting them read and getting them out there where people can read them.
Right.
It's I think this is a great new wave, and like I say, I hope it's not a fad. I hope this is like a change.
Right.
And
I hope
when
so.
telling the story, it's so easy to try and make these women to make them superheroes or to make them never have a wrong step, but to
Right.
show moments of vulnerability. There's so many stereotypes that I personally wanted to defeat in telling Dorothy's story, because just feeling her footsteps, feeling how she moved from place to place to place, and the confrontations with the men, the colonial men, the legislature, everybody. I know that she had moments of fear, that she had moments of wanting to give up, moments of struggle, that if you gloss over that, you take away how big her triumph is. And so I wanted everybody to feel that. And once again, I believe she when she needed to be tough, she made herself be tough. But she was vulnerable. I wrote her to be vulnerable, to be creative, to show that, I guess, 1750s Black girl magic in all of its rewards. Because the sooner we can see, as our kids, as we're growing up and they're reading and they see that we still had agency, but yet we could still, do and be everything that we can despite circumstances, and still not have to be perfect, that we can still screw up and still pick ourselves up and keep going. We need those types of stories.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm wondering how, and maybe the book club members can help me answer this question. But with all these books coming out, I'm wondering if they are being included, or is there any push or effort to include them in the educational system? Because it's great to have these books out there for adults, but in order for really like high schoolers to read these books, they have to be in the high schoolers in the curriculum or in the libraries. Or so for the book club members, do you all know about the educational system in terms, because I know Kay is a teacher, even though you teach at the elementary level, but I'm interested in just knowing what is happening in the schools in terms of literature, African-American literature reaching children.
I would ask Mama Tony the answer. She was a librarian last.
Okay, okay, great.
As a retired librarian, and I was also on the elementary level. But 90% of the time when we go to ALA, the head librarian, I was the second in charge, is normally a Caucasian lady, and they don't look at our books. Even when you recommend, like I can remember a couple of times giving my librarian a list of books to look for on elementary school, and she wanted to tell me that there was nobody there with them. Well, I had no way to dispute her because I wasn't at the conference, so I had to take her word for it. But it's hard. If publishers could kind of get them into what they call library bindings and then suggest them, they'll be easier to get into the schools, especially on the middle school and high school level that way. If they take a couple of books, because if, the one thing I found out, it was put in a library binding and it's put in one library and it becomes a popular book, they're going to pass the word on. Then everybody else begins to order that book for their library and their area.
Okay. Well, what about like English teachers? You know, how did that, well, I don't even know. How do they decide what the students are going to read? Is that
There's
approved by the
there's a
school?
curriculum already put out for them, and 90% of the time you going by that curriculum. Books of the powers that be
Okay.
already said that for the curriculum for 9th grade, this is what should be being read. This is what should be being read for 10th graders. And the easiest way to get in trouble is to stray from that curriculum, for having them to walk into your classroom and instead of reading John Jumped Over the Moon, to be reading Island Queen, because then you're gonna be questioned about, this isn't the book that we recommend. You got to explain who, what, when, where, hows, and why. Education is not as simple as people think it is.
Yeah, but what makes a difference is book clubs like the ones you have on this Zoom call, going and requesting it at the libraries, because the more the libraries have the request, the more they can say, see, we have all these different people looking for it. I gotta notice that there is their 4th top requested book right now. So it's getting out there. It's people going to these different places and requesting it, because once it is requested, it gets easier for teachers and librarians within the schools to say, look, we're having this, people are being impacted, people are requesting it. So it's all about just getting the word out. So like, I love book clubs because you guys do the hard work for us, getting it out there, that word of mouth. So, you know, I know it's a long book, I know, guys, but she lived 90 years. Read the book. And actually, treat yourself, get the audio one book list, which is the ALA's a starred review from ALA for the audio version of the book.
That's the version I think is the audio.
Yes, Adjua Endo slays the entire book. She brings it. It's almost like you're in theater. Remember the radio and the theater? Yeah. She brings it like that. So it's so engaging. You know, and once again, as Mama Tony was saying, the ALA is one of these things that the school systems look for. It's been reviewed and it got star reviewed, which is like their highest level. So we just need you guys out there, you know, reading the book, telling people about it. There is, you know, for this, God has been so good. This has been reviewed in the New York Times. It's been an editor's pick in the New York Times. Basically back-to-back weeks in the Sunday editions of the New York Times, this book has been recognized. And God is just opening doors up for this book. And so like, that's why I always go back to this $20. Yeah.
We have a question from the audience, Vanessa. Dolores Jones wants to know if you plan on expanding Island Queen into the 1900s so you can tell the stories of her children.
Dorothy's children are fascinating all unto themselves. Dorothy Christina, when y'all get to her, is a hot mess. She's the first Black woman to sue for marriage in Scotland. This line is the line of people that come from Dorothy's stock is deep. There are stories there. Potentially the television show will go into a lot more of the daughters and whatnot, etc. So that world's not done, but I have other books that are slated. I just turned in Mother Sister Warrior, which will be next year's hardcover, potentially coming out in the summer, but they may move it. They're looking at seeing where the best slot fits, but potentially be the summer, which is about the 2 women who shaped the Haitian Revolution. Without these 2 women, the Haitian Revolution would have succeeded. And so we're going back in time all the way from Benin or Abomini, Africa.
Wow.
Of one woman all the way through the revolution, or half to the point where and Desalines are able to rally. If it weren't for these folks, it wouldn't happen. So, you know, my personal opinion is it's going to be women that are going to lead, that have to come back and lead to Haiti to take it to the next generation, to take it to bring it back to its proper place. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Any other questions from the book club?
But now Dorothy had enough children for at least one of them, at least one of them, come on, to get their own story, and maybe tell us a little bit about the others, don't you think? Come on, 12 children,
she had a lot. She had a lot of kids.
That's a lot of children considering,
and grands. So Madame Sala will be a fasting one. That's the grand girl. That's Katrina's daughter, or Catalina's daughter, that she put into school. She is fascinating woman of this, basically commanded the stage over here in England. The Prince William actually came to a couple of her shows and whatnot. So there's a continual tightness between these bodies and these families, extended families, as they go forward. But her story is very fascinating. Just from the fact of just how her rise, her husband, there's a big conflict between her and her husband. He didn't want her to go on stage. She decides she's going to do it and do it her own way, and she's a force to be reckoned with. So her story is very fascinating. You've got another one, one of the grandsons who becomes a surgeon general in the medical field for England. So the lineage is very strong. And I like the hot messness of Dorothy Christina personally. But yeah, there's enough there that you could feel some other things. But I liked Dorothy's story in framing it because I always want to bring you guys one uplift, power lift at the end. And so I'm particularly looking for stories that show women, Black women of color who have changed the world, and their stories haven't been told.
Okay.
So, I will tell Dorothy Christina's story, but she a hot mess. It didn't end well, and she didn't win that case. She's a hot mess. She didn't win that case, but she still was the first Black woman to sue for marriage in Scotland. So.
Okay, I'm only on child number 5, so I have a ways to go.
Yeah, girl, you got 5 more to go.
I got. Rhonda, did you have any other questions? We have 3 autographed copies of Island Queen to give away, and also Vanessa provided her special bookmarks for each one.
So bookmark with the tassel on it.
With the tassel on it, really nice. So what we're gonna do, and the audience can participate as well as the book club that are represented. So anybody can win the books. They will be mailed to you at later on tomorrow or the next day. But whenever people win books on the show, they get them pretty quickly. So the first one, when we always do trivia questions related to the book that we're discussing when we do a giveaway. So the first question is, and you may have had to have read at least some of the book to answer these, or you can probably look it up. But anyway, what was the first name of Lizzie's father in the book? The Lizzie, the person in the book named Lizzie. What was the first name of her father? Oh, most of the time people put it in the comments, but you can answer, Jackie.
It was Nicholas or Nick.
That's correct. So you win one of the autographed books. And what you do is you direct message your address on the book festival's page. Send a DM with your address and we'll mail your book to you. These are autographs.
Okay, thank you.
By Vanessa. Okay, the next question is, what was the last name of Katarina's father?
You can type it in the chat if you're quick.
You
Hurry up.
can. The first person to answer wins.
I like this. This is good.
Of course, I could only ask questions up to the point where I got in the book. So these
No
are,
problem. No problem.
I couldn't ask things about I hadn't gotten to the point, you know. So these are early in the book. So that means that even people who didn't finish the book can likely answer them. Or you may be able to look them up. I don't know. But if you determine it later on, you can still put it in the comments and win. And the last question is, this one's somewhat easy, but maybe not. The location, because Vanessa puts the book in parts. So she has part 1, part 2, and so forth. So what's the location in part 1 of the book? Where is it?
So you're talking about the
What if I go with London? Was that right or not right?
/ island.
I didn't hear. I couldn't hear. Because it was
Wait. What was the question?
the location in part 1 of the book, because she has part 1, part 2, and each time she has a part, in the beginning of that part, in every chapter, she says where the location is. So all you have to do is go into the book in part 1 and look at the first page of part 1. It'll tell you the answer.
Mary Ev, wait, we have a couple of them. Stephanie was first. She said Montserrat.
That's correct. So who
Hey!
answered it first?
Stephanie Burnham answered it first.
Okay, Stephanie.
Great with the trick question. I like that, Great.
All right, Stephanie, you're going to need to message your address to the National Book
National Black Book Festival.
Yeah, National Black Book Festival Facebook page, so you can get your book. Congratulations.
Yeah. So we're still waiting on the last name of Katarina's father, but if somebody figures it out after the show, you can still put it in the comments. And if you're right, we'll tell you you're right, and then you can DM your address. Don't DM your address if you haven't answered the question. We know who does. Jackie and then Stephanie. I know they want us. So anyway, are there any final questions for Vanessa? Well, I have one question. See, I have a question. I noticed you've been getting a lot of attention with this book, and that is really good. Has this book been the most attention you've gotten? Because you have, how many books do you have?
About 21-ish, 22-ish, somewhere near the number.
Nice.
Okay. So would you consider this, or even though it's your 22nd or 23rd book, would you consider this somewhat of your breakthrough book, in that you're introduced to a whole much wider audience than before?
Yeah, I was, my very first book was traditionally published, but the browner my books became, the more difficult it was to publish. So my agent at the time, she was like, I'm trying, I can't get anywhere. So I decided to self-publish because they liked my writing, but there was this question whether people would buy Regency books written by a Black woman and centering Black women, because Regency books had been written before by Black women. Like, most people don't realize that Eva Rutland wrote Regencies. She couldn't put her picture in the back. Beautiful Black sister couldn't put a picture in the back of the book, but she was writing Regencies for Harlequin. But that was a big question: would people buy these books? And so I invested in myself. I went and I wrote stories, started with the bargain, put covers, did editing, et cetera, and the market appeared. I think the first book, within a week, with no advertisement, we sold like 1,000 copies. Wow. And we just kept going. There became a point where I wanted to expand the territory. Like, I've done as much as I physically can. So I started doing Entangled Publishing came along. They wanted stories. They were looking to diversify their historicals. And those books, which they actually just put out my first mass market just hit last week in stores. The Bittersweet Bride and the Butterfly Bride is in stores now.
Oh, okay.
But that was the first time where NPR, Entertainment Weekly, Washington Post started looking at my writing and started looking at my stories and started reviewing them. So that was a huge transition. And then with Kensington, a Duke, the Lady and the Baby, and an Earl, the Girl and a Toddler, they caught the imagination. And then because, with Bridgerton being a hit, whenever they wanted to talk about the racial diversity of Regency, well, there's very few people writing about racial diversity in the industry. So I would start getting more questions and whatnot.
Okay.
So there's been this movement. So by the time we get now to Island Queen, I believe it's my breakthrough book because it is breaking through. The reviews have been wonderful. People are, they like the story of this woman that everybody believes they should know. And it's across the board. People are writing in, and they're mad at the education system, Black, white, because to know a woman has been able to survive and thrive under the worst circumstances, it does something to your psyche. And to be her story whitewashed, disappeared from the history books, there's an anger in it, because you're depriving people of that ability to dream if they haven't seen somebody else do something. And across the board, the stories affecting people like that. So I'm grateful. I hope you guys get through the book, read the book, use the audio to get through the book. It's a worthwhile journey. And I think you will enjoy it. And I think you could sit back, because to me, it's one of these books that says, look, she's not perfect. By no means of the stretch of the imagination is Dorothy perfect. But when she needed to be her best self, when history called for her to be her best self, she showed up. And so that's all any of us can do, is show up when you know that you are needed. She showed up for her kids. She showed up when it was time to do things to defeat the political systems, the colonialism that was trying to deprive generational wealth and control Black women. She showed up and made her voice known during those moments. And stories like that need to get out.
Beautiful.
They need to be told.
I love it.
They do.
Thank you.
Well, we're at the end of our first book club kickback. Thank you, Vanessa, for being participating. Thank you all the book clubs for participating. And we're going to be doing this once a quarter. So when we select the next book, we'll be sending out a notification to the book clubs to let you all know, and you can decide. And we'll give you a month or so to read the book, whichever book we select. And so we thank you very much for participating, and you all everybody have a great evening.